Elon Musk, like many conservatives, are having a collective meltdown over a show, an Amazon show known as Rings of Power. And the reason why they don't like it is because it has a strong woman as the main character. Now, thankfully, sane people like Neil Gaiman took the time to put Elon Musk in his place. But before we get to the details of the story, let me just say, you're allowed to not like a show. Like, who cares? But I'm just kind of getting tired of this happening over and over again, where like conservatives melting down over a strong female lead or a gay character becomes like a big story, and then there's a big debate about it. You don't like the show. Okay, you don't like the show. Who cares? I like the show. Watched the first episode of Rings of Power. Gonna keep watching it. Thought it was great. Now, let me give you the details of what's going down here. For anyone who's not familiar with the series, Rings of Power is adapted from the work of J.R.R. Tolkien, and it takes place many years before the events of Lord of the Rings. And the series has debuted to pretty good reviews, but unfortunately, they've been bombed by bigots who are mad at the diversity of the cast. So if you take a look at Rotten Tomatoes, you can see that the average Tomometer has 85%, but the average audience score is 39%. Now, let's take a look at a teaser for Rings of Power that shows the diversity of the cast, and then we'll discuss what Elon Musk has to say and how this all went down.
The skies are strange.
So as you can see, there are still plenty of white dudes in it. Like, so if that's important to you, don't worry. There's lots of white representation, but there's also a little bit of diversity sprinkled in. And I guess that's what Elon Musk is not in favor of. In fact, he tweeted, quote, "Tolkien is turning in his grave." He also says, "Almost every male character so far is a coward." I don't think that's true. A jerk or both. Only I can never say her name correctly. Go ahead, John.
Well, I would say Galadriel, but that's not how the elves would pronounce it.
Galadriel, I'm going to pronounce it the way you do, is brave, smart, and nice. I mean, John, you watched it as well. You're better at being detail-oriented in your reviews of shows and movies. So, like, what do you think?
I think that Elon Musk either didn't watch it or doesn't have the emotional intelligence to properly interpret what he's seeing. And again, as you said, you could not like it. You can think that the first episode was too slow. You can think that you could prefer gritty fantasy rather than Tolkien-esque sort of everything's light and bright and all that. You could want more of a focus on war earlier. I don't know. You can like whatever you want. What you can't do, though, is say almost every male character so far is a coward, a jerk, or both, and also describe Galadriel. You're only using 3 words to describe her, and one of them is nice. You can't do that and have me think that you actually watched it or paid attention.
Totally.
What are you talking about?
She's defiant. I wouldn't say nice.
She's defiant and stubborn. Most people seem to barely tolerate her because she's so dead set on her mission, which I will simply say, if she was a male character that refused to put down the mission she's given herself for hundreds of years, they would all be cheering for it. They can't cheer for it in this case because it's a woman. I will never understand that. Yeah, look, people not liking a show doesn't really matter, except that in this case, and in many cases it does. It is representative of something. It is an attempt by the right to use misogyny and racism, and sometimes a little bit of homophobia, as a tool of radicalization to get people, young white males generally, to turn against everything positive, everything progressive. And this is how they do it. By pretending that a role going to a woman or a black actor or an Afro-Latino actor or whatever is taking the role away from a white person, pretending that simply seeing someone on screen who might be different than you is some sort of affront. And when we say, you know, it doesn't matter what race they are, and I know you're going to get to a great quote that I wasn't familiar with, they hate that. And you know why? They hate the idea that race doesn't determine everything in these worlds. That it wouldn't matter. That Sylvan Elf being Afro-Latino doesn't mean anything because in this world, that's not a thing.
It's
His
a
skin tone
fantasy.
doesn't,
Yeah.
It's fantasy. They hate that because they have been, whether they admit it or not, they believe that they're better because they're white. They don't like the idea of a world where you don't gain some sort of massive superiority based on your race. It bothers them on a visceral level that comes through in their reviews.
Just don't watch. Like, that's the thing I don't get. Okay, just don't watch it. There are all sorts of incredibly popular shows and movies that weren't for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like that movie Sideways, I hated that movie. But for some reason, everyone loves it. Terrible. It was terrible. Okay? Mm-hmm. Terrible. But I'm not going to be like, I hate that movie and it's because of the white males. Like, just.
I wasn't a fan of Dune. Okay. Who cares?
Who cares? The other thing, incredibly popular things like Harry Potter. I tried Harry Potter. Not for me. Not for me.
Oh,
but like, I don't get laugh.
No.
Now, and the other thing is, real quick, the thing I wanted to just point out is they do know that we've had like a century of male dominant programming, right? Like, it's not as though there's been like an unending wave of diverse casts and like white men are no longer getting any roles and they've been completely erased from all shows and movies and programming. Like, that's the point I'm trying to make, right? So if you're offended at a little bit of diversity in this one show, don't worry. There's plenty of other programming out there for you to consume and enjoy. Like, why can't people just get something a little different? You get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, I don't. Yeah. Look, first of all, like, yeah, they're acting as if Captain Marvel came out in 2019. Like, that's how brief we're talking about this sort of cultural moment, which again, still, there are very strong male and white presenting roles in the Rings of Power. Elrond is awesome. That Sylvan Elf is a ninja, basically. These are great roles.
Favorite. Yeah.
Galadriel's brother is this amazing warrior, this like godlike figure. No, they ignore that because it's not convenient to acknowledge that this world has all sorts of people in it, including white people, including males. I like the hatred for something like Miss Marvel. I will never understand not like getting something new out of it. For some of them, look, this is an industry. I don't know if you've looked on YouTube, but complaining about TV shows and movies is massive. You get millions of views by simply declaring, whether you watch it or not, that She-Hulk is the worst show ever, that it's an affront to men. You will make bank making those claims about Rings of Power or House of the Dragon. It's got some women in it, and I find that personally offensive. So listen to me rant about it for 20 minutes. That's one of the reasons that there's so much of this, is there's a lot of money to be made with this sort of pathetic whining.
I mean, it usually comes down to that. But let's talk a little bit about acclaimed author Neil Gaiman, who entered the debate on this in a way that I really do appreciate. So he quote tweeted an Elon fan. Bro, even Elon Musk doesn't like the new Rings of Power show. He quote tweeted that and said this: Elon Musk doesn't come to me for advice on how to fail to buy Twitter. And I don't go to him for film, TV, or literature criticism. And notice the number of likes there. Hundreds, literally hundreds of thousands of likes on that tweet. And he, by the way, was not in any way involved in the making of Rings of Power, but the Elon Brigade, for some reason, thought he was. So they started harassing him about it. And so here's an example. Listen to yourself, guy. Like, that wasn't even comprehensive. If you tweet this, good. I see why the show is a huge letdown and failure. Stop all the woke diversity stuff and give us good Lord of the Rings expanded universe. Elon Musk knows what he's doing. You, sir, don't. And Neil Gaiman quote tweeted that saying, I'm doing my best, but, you know, making all that Lord of the Rings stuff is hard.
Yeah, no, these are not smart people. Look, by the way, they're so devoted to Elon. They said even Elon Musk doesn't like it. What the hell does that mean? What do you mean even? What is Elon Musk known far and wide for loving every TV show, and even he doesn't like it? They consider him a god. That's what it is basically. Neil Gaiman makes out. I think he's involved with that other fantasy show that came out recently, which again you're not obligated to like, but it does star a white male, so maybe it's more likely that they would be a fan of it. I don't know. I just won't understand these people. Lord of the Rings, you don't have to watch it. But first of all, saying that it's terrible, you have no idea. There are 2 episodes out that they probably haven't watched. I think it's pretty good. Maybe it'll end up being bad, but I think it's pretty awesome, actually. And I watch a lot of fantasy. Guarantee I've read more fantasy than every single one of these trolls online.
No, we all know. We all believe you. You don't have to prove your fantasy cred.
I will get the book. Okay, I got books right here, actually. This is some fantasy.
Nerd.
Anyway.
Okay,
Nerd.
final tweet that I want to share with you, because I love this. This is a great tweet. The Chronicles of David tweeted this. 2 different takes from white men born in South Africa. And he quotes J.R.R. Tolkien. I have the hatred of apartheid in my bones. And most of all, I detest the segregation or separation of language and literature. I do not care which of them you think white. And that was a quote from September 23rd of 1944. And Elon Musk, Tolkien is turning in his grave. Like, just to juxtapose those 2 tweets coming from 2 white men born in South Africa. So,
yeah, I love that quote. I hadn't seen that before. And you never know, because there are old school writers from that era that are massive bigots. But the idea that he didn't care, that that's not what the story was about, he would probably be perfectly fine with this, honestly.
You don't have to like everything. It's fine. It doesn't have to be a big national debate. The other thing is like the entitlement of people like Elon Musk to like opine on everything as if it's like the most important opinion ever. You don't like it. Like, it's the same kind of thought process that goes through the mind of like Jordan Peterson needlessly attacking a full-figured model on the cover of Sports Illustrated. No one's forcing you to find her attractive, but normal people don't needlessly go out of their way to insult others out of nowhere, unprovoked.